conversations where we are serving up bold discussions all about relationships, self-growth, self-improvement, and we are actually bringing about healing one episode at a time. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Tiffany.
Yes, and we are so excited about the guest that we have today and the topic that we are going to be discussing.
Yes, we're going in today all about the F word, something everybody can relate to.
Everybody can relate to the F word.
And we have a very special guest today.
We do.
Yes.
We have Sedrick Newbern. So yes, Sedrick Newbern, he's absolutely awesome. Sedrick, you are an author. You're an entrepreneur. Oh my goodness, you are a DJ. So much more. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So before we even get started, let's talk a little bit about how we know each other.
Yes.
And we go way back to high school. Way back.
Wow.
Yes. So we go back to we were both in the Inroads organization, part of the Inroads organization, as well as your absolutely awesome, wonderful mom, Dr. Presley.
Dr. Presley.
Which everyone knows
Yes.
and loves. And actually, I don't know if you knew it or not, but I started my career in corporate America, healthcare administration, and then came to the realization I really wanted to get into education. And so I worked a lot, or your mom really helped me in order to get my certification at Tennessee State University
Yes.
so that I can teach and then eventually in administration. So she is absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Your mom is amazing too, by the way.
Well, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. So we have that connection.
Yes.
Our mothers are sorority sisters.
Sorority sisters.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. So what are we going to talk about?
It's all about forgiveness today.
All about forgiveness.
Something we
What were you all
struggle
thinking?
with.
Something we all struggle with. You know what? If you live long enough, you really do have to at some point deal with forgiveness.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to, I feel like Sedrick is just the best guest to be here to talk about forgiveness because you have written this book called Unconditional Forgiveness.
Yes.
And I'm going to have you kind of speak to what motivated you or inspired you to write this book.
Well, thank you again for having me. I'm excited. Anytime I get to talk about the F word, I enjoy it. Because believe it or not, that book was published in 2012.
Wow.
And pull back a few years prior to that, I was struggling because I was married for the second time and my wife was pregnant, and I really didn't know what it meant to be a father at that time because my dad and my mom divorced when I was a baby. My dad moved to Los Angeles, and I was that kid that got to spend summers with them and Christmas, but like I didn't have my dad in my life really that consistent. And then my mom did remarry, but again, it was different, right? Stepdad, and he really didn't take, let's say he didn't go all in as a dad for me. And so I was really struggling with, now I'm about to have a child, in fact, a son, and my life and my dad's life paralleled so much, it was actually scary.
Wow.
Because when he and my mom met, they got married they got married, and then 2 years later, I was born in DC. Me and my wife married, and 2 years later, we were having a son in the suburbs of DC.
Wow.
9 months after I was born, my dad moved to Los Angeles, so he went west. 9 months after my son was born, I was on a flight being relocated to Chicago for work. And I was freaking out on that flight thinking, I'm doing the exact same thing my dad did. The only difference is obviously I went back and brought my wife and son with me.
How did you feel at that time seeing the parallel between your life track and your dad's?
And I'm just going to say this. I now know that I've dealt with anxiety for years.
Wow.
I had an anxiety attack on that flight
Mm-hmm.
as I was thinking about all of that stuff and the heaviness of starting a new role and the uncertainty and all of that. It was really heavy.
Yeah.
But in the process, I was always seeing 111. And I know this is going to sound strange, but I kept seeing.
Me too.
You're seeing 111?
all the time.
Oh my goodness, you're about to fall
And
out, Tiffany.
I'll show you something
Oh,
later.
You're
Yes,
you're
all
about
the
to
time.
fall.
Go deep into
You
all
will,
the time.
I'm going to tell you,
Okay.
you're going to fall out of your chair.
Okay.
Because I kept seeing it over and over again, and I kept praying about it. Like, God, what is it? And I thought my son was going to be born January 11th, and he wasn't. He was born January 19th. I thought he was going to be born at 1/11.
Right.
5 o'clock in the morning, here he comes. Fast forward, I'm actually at work one day, and I'm talking about the relationship now that I have with my son, and this whole relationship that I have with my dad. And this friend of mine, by the way, from Gary, Indiana, she and I were talking, and I said to her, I was like, I really want to write a book, because I know there's a lot of guys out there like me that have grown up without necessarily having a father in the house that they could really look to for guidance and a role model to be a good dad. And I feel like the relationship I have with my dad now is what I should write about. And then, but I'm still seeing this 1/11. So finally, I'm like, you know what, I should write a book. And actually on that flight, I thought I should write a book about this. But it took me another, 6 or 7 months. I kid you not, I looked in every chapter of the Bible just about. And then one day I'm praying, I said, God, just please reveal to me what it is that you mean by this 1/11.
Right.
And I turned to Revelations 1:11, and it says, what you've seen, write in a book and share it with the 7 churches.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Wow.
Now, full disclosure, because I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool and all. That can't be it. That can't be it. And so I thumbed back to Revelations 1:19, which is my son's birthday, and it says the exact same thing.
Wow.
And so in that moment, it was about Thanksgiving. And in that moment, I said, starting January 11th, 2011, I'm going to start writing this book. And so every month I wrote a chapter and then ultimately published it on my wedding anniversary in 2012. Now, the book itself, it's about the relationship my dad and I had. When I was about 18, I went out there that Christmas break of college, first year. And my dad and I are sitting on the couch, my brother and sister in the back room sleep. And my dad and I are talking. And I literally said to my dad, I said, hey, Dad, I really want to talk to you. I said, I want to get to know you now as a man. I've known you growing up as dad, but I really want to get to know you as a guy, as a man, because I'm turning into you. I'm like, honestly, I look like you, I talk like you, I laugh like you. All these things are so similar. And I just really want to get to know you for myself.
Did he recognize that? Did he see
Oh,
himself
yes.
in you?
Oh,
Okay,
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I would catch him often, just just looking at me like that moment, or I might say something, I do something. He's just sitting there like, he's like, and he stuttered, and I do too. He's like, I don't, I can see where you got that from. And so we would have those moments, but I sat there in that moment. I said, Dad, you know what's crazy? I said, I get it now. I said, I can only imagine at 24 years old how much pressure you were under to be a husband and to be a father, and in a city like DC.
Yeah.
I said, so although you miss a lot about my life growing up, you didn't get to see me play basketball, teach me how to ride a bike, any of that stuff. I get it now. I can kind of understand. I really want to know you for myself. So, Dad, I forgive you for not being there. I forgive you. And I'm 18. Right? I'm talking, but I didn't know the power of what I was saying. Right. And I literally in that moment saw my dad forgive himself. The weight and the pressure and the burden that he had carried all those years. And he goes into a deeper conversation with me about how terrible he's felt because he left my mom and wasn't there for me growing up. Right. And that day began the relationship that turned into, I talk to my dad just about every week. We shared stories and frustrations and relationship advice, business advice, you name it. We talked about it. Sports. He was my son's biggest fan, so every time my son had a game, he was 5 years old, it was ESPN highlights. I had to tell him how many points he made and all that. And literally the day he passed away, he and I just had a conversation. I called him after I picked my son up from school, and we talked, we laughed, and he was telling me he was having some pain, and I said, well, it'll be okay. You can go get checked out. And it was the night that Steph Curry broke the record for 3-point shots, right? And I picked up my phone to call him or to text him and say, our boy did it again, because we both love Steph Curry. And I saw then there was a text from my sister saying that Dad was unresponsive. and that he had a heart attack and passed away later on that night. So me and my dad became like this.
That's
And
great.
I realized that my dad had truly shown me how to be a father.
And that's God, because not a lot of people get the opportunity for alignment in that moment. You at 18, still being so young, for you to be in the spirit of, I forgive you, Dad.
Yes.
And for him to not be defensive, for him
Right.
to be clear in that moment so you all could have a new relationship in the years he had left is really a God-given gift.
It was.
But
It
so,
really was.
can I ask something, because I was reading the book, which is an excellent read.
Thank you.
So, and you spoke to it a little bit. Your parents separated when you were just 9 months old. So when you say here you spent the first 13 years of your life without a father figure in my house.
Correct.
The first 13 years, where was he then? I mean,
So when he left, he
Mhm.
moved to Los Angeles,
Uh-huh.
and my mom moved back to Nashville.
Okay. So, yes.
So I joke about being bi-coastal because
Exactly.
I really didn't. The first moment I had to see him or meet him,
Mhm.
I was 5,
Okay.
and my mom, of course, was in school working on her master's,
Mhm.
and then ultimately working. And so I'd go out there and visit. And from 5 till about 13, I believe I went out there maybe 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
But yeah, it was not, and you know, back then in the 1900s,
Yeah.
you know, long distance phone calls were
That's
expensive,
right.
you know,
Right. Exactly.
and so we
Yeah.
didn't have the ability to really foster that bond or that relationship.
Right.
But as I got to high school,
Mhm.
I really wanted to see him and spend more time with him. So I would go out there every summer and spend like at least a month with him.
Can we? Yes, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that early experience that you had with him, has that impacted you even after his death as a father, as a
Absolutely.
husband? Do you recognize any of those sort of wounds that emerge for you?
Let me
even
tell
now?
you, I don't miss a thing with my son.
That's
and
awesome.
and because and I will say there were other men along the way that filled in the gap. Right.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up here in Nashville, and there's always some amazing men around me.
Mhm.
Thanks to my mom, she was wise beyond her years.
Yes.
And so whether it was my best friend's dad that would pick me up, and he ran a barber shop, so he had Mondays off, and when we were out of school, we'd go to Silver Sands to eat, and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I saw what fathers were like in the house.
Yeah.
And so now with my own son, I'm all in. I'm also all in for other people whose fathers aren't with them. So I mean, I've done daddy-daughter dances, taking young ladies whose dads passed away to the dance. So I definitely am. I see now, and what's really amazing is when I saw what my dad did with my siblings that he had in Los Angeles. He was an amazing dad. Like he was that guy, and my dad was also that guy for so many other young men. Like he literally carried this around with his Bible.
Oh wow.
And any chance he had an opportunity to pour into somebody that was struggling with the relationship with their own father, or struggling as a father with the relationship with their kids, or going through a divorce, he would hand them a copy of the book, and he would go out and buy another one. And he told me one day, he's like, I know I've given out at least 30 copies of the book, because he was involved in his church and involved in men's ministry, and so I've watched that moment at age 18 become a ministry for me. And I've had the opportunity to share with thousands of people across the U.S. People are buying this book all around the world. And it's been a testament. Now, my dad's a very private person, and I remember as I was writing the book,
That's awkward.
yeah, he was like, now you put my business out, son.
Exactly.
And so I literally had to share it with him. I shared each chapter with him before I would publish it, and he's like, oh. But what was amazing in the process, which we'll talk about what forgiveness really looks like, there were things that I remembered in writing this book that I had suppressed or had forgotten, and those emotions started to come up and come out.
I was going to ask about that.
Yes.
What did you find along the way?
I figured out that forgiveness is truly a journey, and I say that all the time, because you can have something happen to you and you can forgive that person, but the scar still stays. It stays. I mean, it becomes a scab, right? And you know how scabs work. It's healing.
Yes.
And if you accidentally pop that scab too soon, what happens? It has to scab over
That's
again.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I realized that there were some wounds that hadn't fully healed. But writing the book, putting it out there and having to talk about it, and seeing the impact that my journey was having on other people, especially men.
Yes.
That was fun for me because now I'm like, okay, my experience was not in vain. God walked me down a path that allowed me to help other men, and better yet, young men process their relationships with their dads. And again, mine was a storybook. I know a lot of young men out there who don't even know their father. The father has just said, your mama was crazy, I left. Like they've not stepped into their own role and responsibility in that. And so helping them understand that you can forgive that guy and they may never tell you that they're sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is the lesson that I teach everyone. Forgiveness is really not about that person owning and accepting their responsibility.
Right.
It's for you.
Right.
It's
It
for
is.
you.
For you.
It is for you.
Can I bring this up? I want to kind of go back because I think this is very important, and especially me even being divorced and having children. Your mom, there's a chapter in here that said, "Mom, it's not your fault," which was just an amazing chapter. First, I want to say that as a mother, she felt that it was necessary for you to have a relationship with your
Yes.
father,
Absolutely.
regardless of whatever she went through with your
Absolutely.
father. And think about how many of us have had, whether it's been an abusive relationship, whatever the case. And whatever those specifics were, she felt it was necessary. Can we talk about the importance of women when you don't have the best relationship with the father of your children, the importance to you, and I just have to give credit to her for stepping back saying, but my son has to have the importance of that relationship taking place.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit to that.
You know, again, you said it already. My mom was an amazing woman in those years because my mom held on to the bitterness. My mom hadn't processed true forgiveness. Now, she says she has. She still, to this day, says she has.
Right.
However,
Right.
sorry, mama, if you watch this, I don't believe through full behavior that she is truly forgiven.
Yeah.
Because, as I said before, this is about not necessarily receiving the apology, right?
Right.
And I can tell you in later years, prior to my dad passing away, they did have a conversation. He did own up and he apologized to her, and I know that helped her in the healing process.
Yeah.
But the other piece of this is that you also have to forgive yourself.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
oftentimes we go down this path and say, this happened to me because I allowed this, and this.
Yes.
Why didn't I? Why couldn't I? How did I let this happen?
Right.
So what happens is that we're not forgiving ourselves, and we're still trying to put all the onus necessarily on that person that hurt us, and we're holding on to the pain because we haven't let go.
Right.
So that being said, my mom really did something that was truly amazing, and she said, you know what? You need to have a relationship with your father. I know a large part of that was because my mom had a great relationship with her dad, and I think she saw the value in that. And to your point, even though she and my dad didn't necessarily do things the right way throughout my childhood, she still didn't hold that against my dad. She still didn't hold me or keep me hostage. And unfortunately, I've seen that. I've seen too many women say to a dad who's trying, right? The dad wants to be in the life, but the mom is, you hurt me.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're dropping seeds into the children's ears. And when they go over to the dad's house, that kid has all of that baggage with them.
Yeah.
And they're looking for stuff as opposed to them having an opportunity to have the relationship that they would naturally develop. Because we all know, kids are very smart.
Yes.
Kids figure it out.
Yes.
And I've watched so many children come of age late teenage years, and they realize who was really behind the separation. No matter what they've been told, they find all those things out. But that being said, my mom really did a great job of not speaking negatively about my dad too often. Now, stuff came up.
Right.
She had her moments.
Right.
And times were tough. And so she would share things with me, but it never became the focus. It was never your dad is a sorry son of a you know what.
Yeah.
It was I just wish your dad would do more.
Yeah.
And that's why, to your point earlier, that's why I tend to do way more than I probably should. I carry that guilt as a dad, like, oh man, I had to miss my son's game today because of this, or I want my son and I to have this kind of relationship because that's what I thought I wanted from my own relationship with my dad. But yeah, my mom, I really challenged her over the years and said, it's not your fault. Yeah. Like you did what you knew to do at that age to try to stay in the relationship, but I wouldn't be the man I am today had that not occurred.
I really got emotional in that chapter where it was titled "Mom, It's Not Your Fault," because, and I promise you, I'm not going to get emotional, but I think as moms we want the best for our children.
Absolutely.
And so, and even for me, because I had such a great childhood and came from a 2-parent household, had a wonderful mom and dad, you feel like you owe that and so much more to your children. And so just reading even the poem that you wrote in here saying, Mom, it's not your fault, because we do have some sense of, I don't know, we have some sense of where we feel like we're responsible for making the choices that we made and then putting our children in that position of having to now be with, with a single mom, not having both parents. And so that's something that was very emotional to me, because still to this day, my eldest is 28 and then the twins are 19. But I still hold on sometimes to that guilt of not being able to give them the best of everything.
So release that.
Yes, I know.
Because you did. You
Right.
gave them the best of
Right.
everything.
Yes.
And what I'll say too is that we also see the impact of parents that stayed together.
Yes.
And it was a very toxic environment.
Yes.
And now those kids are adults and they're recreating that same toxicity in relationships.
Right. You're right. You're right.
And we staying together for the kids, but you're
right.
not modeling relationship for the
Exactly.
kids.
And that was probably one of the best things is sometimes we say we stay married for the kids. Well, I actually stayed married for the kids for a while, but then I also got divorced for the kids, which was better for them because just like you said, there was so much toxicity going on in that environment. But let's talk a little bit about how did you, so here you are, you're having that conversation with your father. And I think in the story you said you were about 18, you're on summer vacation. Did you know going there you were going to have this, what prompted that for you to have that conversation?
Honestly, I have talked with him about it. I don't know. It was in that moment we were talking, and I want to say I was saying something about, I don't know, who knows, sports or girlfriend or something, that I was just sharing a story with him, and he made a comment like, man, I missed out on that, and I missed out on so many other things. And my dad was one of those deep brothers. He's one of them cool, soul, listen to jazz music kind of dudes. What can't go? So he's sitting there, he's really deep thoughts about, I'm sorry I missed out on that, blah, blah, blah. And that's what prompted me to say that, you missed it, but I turned out okay. And I need to know who you are. So I did not go into it truly having this idea that I want to have a conversation with him. But that was, for me, it was a turning point in so many ways because, again, I'm grown. I'm 18. And that also was when I was about to pledge Kappa. And my dad was on Omega. And so I'm having, so we're having a lot of conversations at this time. In fact, we had gone to the mall and he's pointing at Laker hats. I was like, Dad, no, that's the wrong color, man. I can't wear those two colors together. And he's like, oh, no, I should have been there for you, son. And I said, no,
We're not go wrong.
yeah, we're not go wrong. I said, I grew up in crimson and cream in the house. That's all I know.
Wow.
But so that whole experience at Christmas, it was just like that. We just had those moments where it, like, our relationship shifted from, call it father-son of an adolescent to now father-son of an adult. And so we were starting to have those conversations about relationship and working, and and I knew then that I was in inroads and that I was going to possibly have an internship for the summer. And so he was talking to me about that kind of stuff, and so we were just in that phase of life in that break. But no, I truly wish I could remember what was going on other than just me saying, hey, Dad, I forgive you. And I said it just like that. It was so matter of fact that it wasn't even it wasn't one of those, Dad, it wasn't even like, Dad, I forgive you, I know what I can't imagine. You were only 6 years older than I am right now. So.
And you did that moment sort of translate into your ability to forgive people in other relationships that you had moving forward?
It did. And I'll say this. Again, I was 18.
Yeah.
So
very young.
In that moment, although I witnessed him forgive himself, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But I realized that there was a shift in our relationship after that moment. So then fast forward 21, 22, 23, I started to have other relationships that just say didn't work out so well, and I'm like, okay, I need to forgive myself because I know I did something stupid. This person probably will hate me for the rest of their lives. I need to forgive that person because they did this, because I noticed that I was starting to hold grudges, especially in relationships, and as we were trying to figure it out, we do dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta let that go. I can't. Because I noticed, I watched myself suspicious of the next lady that I dated because of what the one prior had done.
And it really keeps you rooted in the past, the emotion of forgiveness. If you don't let it go and sort of process it for yourself, even if you never tell that person. Because I believe when Maya Angelou said, when they show you who they are, believe them the first time. And I still stick by that. But you can forgive the betrayal, you can forgive whatever it is and free yourself of that and not hold on to the emotions so you're not rooted in your past. Otherwise, you repeat that pain over and over, and it comes in other people in other forms because it's inside you. That's why forgiveness is about you and not about them.
I totally agree. I remember as I was out speaking early on the book, I heard a couple scenarios that made so much sense to me. Number one, you don't drive down the street looking in the rearview mirror.
Yep.
There's a reason the windshield is larger, right?
Yeah.
The windshield has to be larger in proximity to the rearview mirror, right?
That's good.
You want to be able to see what you passed,
Yes.
but you got to look ahead so you avoid.
And it's just a
obstacles.
peek.
And it's just a peek.
That's right.
And then the other one, someone talked about going to the grocery store. You guys may have heard this one. And you're in line, there's somebody in front of you, and they've got all these groceries. They check out, and then when you step up, you got a candy bar and a Coca-Cola, and they tell you, oh, it's going to be $200. And you're like, wait, I just have a Coke and a candy bar. And they're like, oh, no, you got to pay for the person that went before you. That's how we treat a relationship. I know. And look, I get chills every time I say it.
Yes.
I get chills, and especially when I speak to women, because a lot of women relate to this book and Unpack Now, and especially single moms. Like they're trying to figure it out, and I'm like, you can't charge the next man for what the previous man did to you.
Yes.
And trust me, I've just celebrated 19 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you. And I joke about it all the time that she has tried everything possible to get me to leave, and I told her I ain't going nowhere. And that's our running joke. There's a running joke. She is an amazing woman, but we both came into our marriage with a bunch of baggage. We were still processing divorces. We're processing life and where are we going, and we had some bumps along the way, but because of our friendship, that was the foundation. That's what helped us get through a lot of that, because I realized, like, she is the only person that truly gets me. except for when it's about her. Like when it's on her, she don't like we never see eye to eye when it's about her.
Yeah.
But like other things, she's like, oh, you got that figured out. And frankly, she helped me write these books. She's helped me in coaching other people in their marriages and relationships. But she's a quiet behind the scenes. Like, no, you're the one that goes out there. But I can tell you, I've had speaking events where she finally did show up, and the women were like, "Well, his wife's back there. Why don't we talk? Why don't ask her?" And she'll stand up and seriously, she will say something so profound, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh." Oh. And then they'll come up and start talking to her afterwards. She's like, "See, that's why I like to go to these things." But seriously, I think when you realize that you're carrying the baggage, that's when you can unpack it. You don't. A lot of us think, "Oh, I'm good," and especially my guys. I talk to them like, "Man, you process everything you've been through." "Man, no, I'm good. I moved on. I got me another one." Like, yeah, but you never process the other stuff. Like, you gotta. I mean, it's okay to get the new one, but you gotta process that so that way, the same mistakes aren't repeated.
Exactly.
But
let me ask you this, and I definitely agree on forgiving, and it's just that release of really forgiving. You're getting rid of all the bitterness, you're getting rid of the anger, so that you can move forward. But there's a chapter in the book where it's called "To Forgive, You Have to Forget." And I know we always hear the saying, I'll forgive, but I'm not going to forget. I will never forget. Help us to understand that, because a lot of us, we will forgive. Hey, I forgive you. We're going to move on. For me, for you, for the children, whatever the reason, but to forget. Let's talk, go deeper.
And are there some offenses where it's just on site? If somebody messes with your kids, if somebody does something so deeply disrespectful, that is a portrait of that person's character, and you have to compartmentalize who they really are. You forgive them and you release them, but you see them out, or what does that look like?
Yes. Here we go. We want to hear this.
I know. I was like,
we want to hear this.
Let's not slide over this way.
My brother is still mad at an ex-boyfriend, and I'm like, I don't even think about that person anymore. If I see him, I'm like,
That's love. Unconditional love. So let me be clear. It is impossible to forget. All right. Let's just be clear about that.
Right.
What I mean by that, in order to forgive, you gotta forget. You have to forget about a few things. Number one, you gotta forget about that imaginary space that you were in when you were with them, right? So if you've got this mystical world that you created, and now that's gone, you gotta forget about that, so you can let that go. You gotta also forget about the pain that was caused, right? Right? Now, I'm not saying forget about the actions that led to the pain. Forget about the pain, right? And it's literally just popped in my head, but I hear a lot of women talk about the birthing experience. And if you truly remember that pain that you went through,
do it again.
You wouldn't do it again. Right. So, but if you are going to be a mother for a second time, you have to somehow, God makes it kind of mystical that you forget about how painful that process of labor was, so that you can have the joy of the birth.
I like that.
So that's what I mean by that. Don't get so caught up in holding on, because literally, if you don't mind, this is me. I'm moving on. I forgave you, but I'm still holding on to you because I ain't forgot about you and what you did to me. So that got really emotional for me. I thought about some stuff from my past. But that's why I think it's so important that we understand that forgiveness is truly about ourselves. It's not about the other person, because again, if I'm still holding on to your brother, still holding on to that ex, you've moved on.
I have, because the version of me that was in that experience no longer exists.
Exactly.
And he's stuck in that image of what he conceptualized that to mean for me, but I'm not that girl anymore.
Absolutely. But and so that brings me to another great point. Another wise point made by my amazing wife. I got permission to talk about it. Usually say, don't talk about it. But But one of the things that she said very early on in our relationship was to be careful sharing with your family what goes on
I love
in
that.
our relationship.
Yes.
Good advice.
And I'm like, you know, now
Yes.
I'm a mama's boy,
Yes.
and you know my mama knows it. So it's kind of hard for
Yeah.
me to not share with my mom what's going on.
Ah,
But she made the point that what happens if you and I have a fight, you have a conversation, tell your mom everything that I said or did in that fight, you and I make up, your mom's still mad at me.
that's right. That's right.
And then we have the next fight.
That's right.
Your mom is still mad at me from the first fight. We make up, and now you've added on to that. And so before you know it, your family is all in your business telling you what to do because they've only seen that one side.
And our mama's unhealed stuff gets projected into the story
Oh,
and
Very
becomes a
much so.
part of
Yes.
our narrative.
Yes.
Yes.
It shouldn't be.
Yes.
Yes.
You just said a whole mouthful.
that's right.
And that's the whole point of letting it go, unpacking the baggage, because we're now in second and third generation of generational trauma.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and we can talk about where the trauma began for us in this country.
That's right.
We can talk about the separation and the anxiety that comes
Oh, my
with
goodness, yes.
fatherhood and relationships and the absence of men and all that good stuff. There are plenty of men out there that are still actively engaged in marriage and being fathers. But the overwhelming conversation we have is what? They're not. They're checked out. And a lot of that too is the result of the unhealed trauma of moms that in some cases, not all, but in some cases, created an environment where that man couldn't heal himself. And now he's like, man, I can't deal, I got to go. And so we have to process that and have open conversations about it. And I actually, you know, in the social media world, I saw something just the other day, and it talked about men having a safe place at home to come and talk. And this literally gave me, call it a title and words for the relationship that I have now. When I go to work, I deal with all kind of stuff, right? When I'm driving down the street, I'm dealing with stuff. If police pull out behind me, I got all this stuff that goes through my head. When I walk in the house, if I don't feel greeted in a way that you're happy to see me, if all I hear is, I told you take the trash out before you left for work today. If I start to talk about my day and it gets dismissed as, you need to suck that up, get over it, you know, man up, who do I talk to? And that hit me because I realized that there are a lot of guys out there that don't have somebody to talk to. Now I got a couple of good friends. When we dealing with stuff, I know when my phone rings and it ain't some silly text or real. When the phone rings, like, yo, what's up? What's going on?
Yeah.
And I can tell by the tone, and I will pause everything so I can have that conversation because those guys were there for me when I went through my divorce. I've been for them when they had their challenges in relationship and jobs. But as men, we don't have those safe spaces. And as women, do we open the door for them to have that safe space?
And how do two people create that environment for each other? In the social media world, you just reminded me of a clip I saw, and it's Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin. And she's saying that, you know, when you're out at the factory, you smiling at the boss man. Of course, he doesn't know you hate him because you smile at him all day long. And then when you come home to me, you bring all that frustration and that negative energy.
That's right.
And you know, how do we both create that reciprocity of safety for us to really, you know, have a healthy, loving type of safe place to come home to?
Well, we talked about the F word. We also have to talk about the C word.
What's the C word?
Communication.
Oh,
Okay.
that.
The 4-letter word that begins with F that I can't stand in my house is what?
The bad one?
No. It's actually worse than the bad one.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Four-letter word.
4-letter begins with an F.
funk is coming to mind.
I
But I know that ain't it.
Are you okay?
Fine.
Oh, you're fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
I'm good.
We're all fine over here.
I can't stand that word. I can't stand that word.
It's dismissive.
It is, and
Yes.
it's not. And what happens? The old me was like, "Oh, man, you good?
You
All
good,
right.
right,
I mean,
right.
you moving different, but okay." But the new me is like, pause. Hey, no, what's going on? Like, talk to me. I think we've got to find a way that we can talk to each other about that stuff.
Yeah.
And to your point, we get into this mode because like she'll come to me with stuff from work, and I'm a fixer, I'm a solver, I'm a guy. I can't help it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, you come to me, I've got years of leadership experience.
That's right.
This is what you gotta do.
That's right.
You know,
That's
this is what you need. It's like, I don't want that. I just need you to hear me.
Just listen.
And I'm like, I don't just listen. I want you out of that space because my job is to protect you and your heart.
Right.
I also have to come in the house some days and be like, babe, look, today was a little tough. And where we are now, it's taken us some years to get there, but now if I say, hey, today was tough, she'll be like, okay, what happened? It's like whatever is going on with her, with Matthew, whatever, she'll be like, no, what happened? What's going on? And my wife, she does give me the tough love because she knows that I need that.
Mm-hmm.
Not all men necessarily need that, but she's like, babe, look. She'll give me that look. You tripping? You know who you are. She'll go down that path. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then next thing you know, I'm like, all right, bet. And then we're back to where we need to be. But I think that C word is important, and it's got to be open and honest, right? Because you can't just be fine.
Well, there's that other 4-letter F word, and that's fear. A lot of times we're scared to be in our truth and be vulnerable. We're scared that we'll get shut down, that we'll be rejected, or that we'll be punished later for it. Because people do that even subconsciously, not knowing that they do it. And those little microaggressions eat away at the C word.
And where does all of that start?
I think it starts in how we grew up. I think those patterns start very early.
So if we can find a way to identify the childhood traumas and recognize them as they happen, right? As opposed to everything blow up and then you go to your separate corners and you process like, oh, wait a minute, I probably shouldn't have been like that in that moment. I've had to process a lot of stuff from my childhood. Where does this really come from? Why does it bother me when she says or does this?
Yeah.
And now that I know where it comes from, number one, I have a more forgiving heart. Because my wife, she's a silent assassin. She's quiet. I'm like, hey, where are you about to head out to? You know, she might snap on me like, why are you asking me questions about where I'm going? Well, that triggers me because it triggered her. So next thing you know, we both sitting there triggering each other. But you know, we're in a big old fight, and all she was doing was going to Target. You know, like, why are we fighting? Because all you had to say was, I'm going to Target. But we've had to process those moments so we can get to why we are afraid to be vulnerable. And again, 19 years of marriage, together 21 years, we still have moments of fear. We still have challenges with being vulnerable. But I believe that we are the most honest and upfront and immediate at this point than we've ever been. And that was because I said to her, you can't be upset with me for days and not let me know.
It takes time.
It does.
Yeah.
And don't you think it also takes working on yourself? Because I think in some relationships, it just seems like the two of you have been able to unpack things not only as a couple, but also individually.
Yes.
You know, you've been able to process things by writing the book and forgiving, you know, your dad, you know, and maybe things that she has also done. So there's been probably some self-work
First marriage
there.
too.
Yes.
What happened for me, quite honestly, is I remember hearing a sermon and he talked about the fact that oftentimes I'd much rather point out what you did wrong than figure out what I did to cause it.
Right.
And it really hit me. I was like, like what if, and I literally had this up, what if every time my wife gets upset with me or does something to me that upsets me, what if instead of just going all in on what she did and trying to teach her, you know, coach her out of that, right? You know, don't do that. What if I started to process, okay, what led up to that moment? And how could I have approached it differently? Is it something that I said, something I did? Am I moving differently in a way that makes her feel less than safe? Because one of the big things that we dealt with early on was trust. And I joke about it. When I first started dating her, most guys watching this show, I'm sorry, but 19 years in, I think it worked out. First thing I did was, this is my phone, this is my password. And she was like, I don't need that. I said, I know. Here's a key to my place. What? I said, no. Like, I want you to know that you can trust me. No matter what. And if I had a phone call, I'd answer, hey, what's going on? I never hid things because I knew that I need to build a foundation of trust with her. So much more than maybe I would have needed to in her 20s because of what she had been through in life. I needed to show that I was trustworthy because I wasn't always trustworthy. And we're not going to edit that out. I was not always trustworthy before this relationship. So I knew that I had to trust my own self. And the only way I could do that was hold myself accountable by giving her the code so she could get in and see what I was doing when she wasn't around. And that helped me in so many ways. So that way I could be the guy I need to be. So when she popped off, like you said, on site, and she ready to go, I could back it up and be like, okay, am I moving different? Did I do something? Did I cause any concern? And then I'm also able to then go right in and say, hey, whoa.
Yeah.
Just so you know, it ain't what you think, this, and this. And it takes her a minute because she ready to pop, but she like, and I'll say, you know me, and you know how I am. I am never going to do anything to hurt you. And sometimes you just have to hear it, even though you know it, you believe it.
You do need to hear
You
it
gotta
sometimes.
hear it. You gotta hear it.
But I think that's a beautiful practice that you put in place in your relationship because, sometimes it's not necessarily about going in and fixing things. It's about increasing your capacity to show grace, to allow the other person to be where they are, let them sit with it, you hold space for them, show them grace, and then keep doing it, keep showing up for them in that way, in that very loving way where they can peel back themselves and show up for you in the same way.
Exactly.
Then you create more beauty in your relationship.
I agree. So she's a thinker, and I'm not. I'm a Virgo. I act on impulse. I'm like, hey, let's get this done. There's a process. Let's plan it out. Let's get this.
That's right.
And she's like, no, I need to go back and think through it. And we now come to a place where we can not always meet in the middle. Let's be honest about it. Sometimes I got to go a little further on her side. Sometimes she comes a little further on my side. But we find a way to meet up as an ultimate goal instead of us staying in that, let's fix it now, or I want to process this for a month. That's helped us tremendously. And I think too, when you use the C word, when you communicate and everything isn't just fine, if you say, you know what, I'm not good right now, but I need to talk. I need to, let me process this. Then I have the ability to then give you grace. Now keep in mind, I'm on punishment at that point. I'm like, yeah, what did I do? And so I'm going through everything in my brain trying to, what did I, But I think being able to communicate on the front end, I'm not fine. It also tells me that you love me enough to have the conversation, right? If you just avoid me altogether, I'm like, well, why put in the work? Why do I have to do this?
Exactly.
I'm going to take us back to the F word.
Uh-oh.
Not fear, but forgiveness.
Forgiveness, yes.
Because I feel like that we have a lot of viewers that have been through some things that they're like, okay, it's not as simple. It's to forgive someone maybe that just, I don't know, maybe was unfaithful, maybe someone that just didn't hold up their end, but there are viewers that maybe have been through very traumatic experiences. There are, you think about those that have maybe lost a loved one to, gun violence or, police brutality or whatever the circumstance. Can we talk to them? Because forgiveness is just, it's hard. It's tough.
Easy.
I can say that it is definitely you're able to release that bitterness. I know when I was going through my divorce, and I haven't really spoke that much about it, but of course I was in a physical and an emotionally abusive relationship. But I always think about things from a spiritual aspect. God tells us to forgive. Jesus forgave, which is why he tells us to forgive, so that he can forgive us, because we're all sinners. And so I always held to that as much as we did to Jesus, I think about God, Jesus up there on the cross, and all the pain and the suffering and everything that was done to him, yet he looked out and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And so when I thought about the things that my ex-husband did to me, it says we wrestle not against flesh, okay? So I'm thinking the things that he was doing, that he was really a hurt person hurting me.
Right.
And I know I'm being long-winded here, but I think
you're processing.
I'm processing this because the reason I was able to forgive him is not only just so I could release the anger and bitterness and move on. I knew that he also was hurt in his childhood, things that he had not unpacked, things that he had not addressed, because he did come from an abusive relationship, a fatherless household, and never got healed from that. And so I just think that when we talk about forgiveness, I guess I'm saying that it can be very difficult dependent upon what people have been through. So I kind of want to go back to that and maybe talk about some things, just speak maybe to our viewers on going deep, how you felt, how it really felt not having that father in the household, how some of this really feels, and how we can move past the bitterness and anger and truly forgive.
And
so
I
that
just
we
want to
can
add something to what you said.
Yes.
Forgiveness does not equate to absolution.
Right.
True.
People still have consequences. That's
True.
the on-site part.
Yes.
People still
Yes.
have consequences
Yes.
for their
Yes.
actions.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
Lord deals with us sometimes in grace
True.
and ass whipping.
Yes.
So
True.
even the
That's
Lord
true.
uses
True.
that model of,
Yes.
teaching us through our
Absolutely.
consequences.
Right.
So I just want to say,
Mhm.
wherever you get stuck in unforgiveness,
Mhm.
I feel like the devil is where you are stuck. It is
True.
your stuck
Very
place.
true.
Yes.
Very
And
true.
karma is where you don't let things go and you keep reliving
Mhm.
the same experience over and over
Mhm.
again because you have that stuck place.
Right.
So it really is all about freeing yourself,
Yeah.
recognizing that person is in their humanity,
Mhm.
but they still have to live out whatever they have to live out.
Exactly.
He still got to do his own healing or he gonna hurt the next one.
Exactly. Yes.
So-
yes. I think putting that into perspective
It's
and
not people
understanding
pleasing.
that.
It's
Yes.
never
Yes.
taking the guilt from the person.
Exactly.
They still have to live with
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. I think it was really looking at it, putting things into perspective and looking at his hurt, and you're right, being able to forgive him so that I could move on. But you're exactly right. I don't take that,
I hope he
part of
finds
it.
his way.
I do
Yes,
too.
yes,
I
yes.
do.
I mean, you want people to, be happy and to be able to find their way,
Absolutely.
to be able to have healing.
Absolutely.
And so I guess I just want our viewers, I want us to be able to really speak to that viewer that's in pain, that may have suffered a loss.
Well,
I
think she
just kind of said it, didn't she? Yeah.
There as you were talking,
Mhm.
one thing came to my head,
Mhm.
and then you said the other thing that I was going to close with.
Okay.
When I think about the families of those that were murdered in South Carolina in the church,
Yes.
and how quickly they forgave
Yeah.
the guy that came
Yes, they
in,
did.
literally into a church, prayed with them, and then
The
killed them.
Emmanuel 9.
Yes, like,
That's right.
could you imagine how challenging that is?
Right.
But when you really put it in perspective, the last act that Jesus did before dying for all of us was to forgive and allow people who had been judged by others
Yeah,
and committed crimes an
Mhm.
opportunity to enter into heaven with him.
that's right.
So how can
That's
Lil old Sid out here walking around not forgive somebody else,
Mhm.
to your point, for something that they're dealing with?
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, murder, molestation, sexual abuse,
Right.
physical abuse, domestic violence, all of those things. Yes, it is difficult,
Yeah.
but I don't want to say they're unforgivable,
Right.
because guess what? They have to pay the price themselves.
Yes.
Either they're going to process it
Yes.
and hopefully find themselves in a better space,
Mhm.
the legal system's going to deal with them.
Right.
But nothing that you can do by holding on to hatred or unforgiveness for them
Yes.
is going to impact them.
Yes.
It's not going to change them. It's not going to heal them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another famous quote out there, unforgiveness is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot do that.
Right.
So you got to find a way to compartmentalize and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Recognize that this person did something evil to you or to someone that you love, but you hating them makes you no better because you're causing and creating pain for yourself.
Yeah. And let me tell you one more thing that they can do.
Oh.
They can pick up. Let me just go ahead and say that it is a very powerful, it's really a quick read to me. I mean, I got into it and I just really got through it, but there's so many powerful points.
Thank you.
I feel like you were extremely authentic and just very open in this book, Unconditional Forgiveness.
And there's a reason.
Actually, yes.
There's a reason for unconditional forgiveness.
Yes.
And you asked the question earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Unconditional love is what? I love you no matter what.
No matter what.
That's right.
No matter what.
Yes. And
So I
forgiveness.
forgive you no matter what.
I love it. And then the other book is
Unpack Now.
Unpack Now. And I love this illustration. But these are just two books that our viewers, they can actually get on Amazon. Correct.
Yes. And by the way, there is a workbook that goes with this. So if you're one of those people that like to process things by writing,
Yes.
you can always get the workbook that accompanies this and go through some exercises in there as well.
And in this book, that you actually have after each chapter,
yes.
you've incorporated that,
Yes.
which I thought was really great.
Yes.
For you to
Again,
kind of unpack. Yes.
Because this is work.
Yes, it is.
This is not a sit down and read. This is work.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come to me and say, you know what, I read your book 5 years ago, but I was dealing with something and I picked it back up and I went back to do the work. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Because again, forgiveness is a journey. You're not going to, it's not like you're going to hit a destination tomorrow
That's right.
and all is going to be forgiven, life's going to be good. There's going to be something,
Yes.
Y'all know how it is when you had that first love that hurt your feelings.
Yes.
And all of a sudden that Jodeci song come on the radio and it reminds you that one time y'all were together and you're like, there's always going to be something that's going to come back to remind you of what you need to, again, forgive them for. And each time it gets better and better, easier and easier. And like I said before with the scab, at some point you'll get to a place where there's no more scab, there will still be a mark. So you'll know that something happened to you.
Yeah.
But it no longer will affect you. It won't hurt you. But there's a reminder there so that you know.
And hopefully you smile at it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
look at where I am now. It's faded. Yeah. And again, that's why I love having these conversations, because I see the impact of people moving past pain, and especially I want to write a book about childhood trauma.
You should.
Because I
Yes,
think
you
that's the origin of so much for all of us. Like, we repeat the cycles of generational curses
Yes.
and generational trauma.
Yes.
I have a book in me
Yes.
about that, but it's not trauma, because I think trauma is grossly overused.
It is, yes, it is.
I think we go through developmental milestones, and
Yes.
depending on how we process it and how we repeat just the experience of it and the neuroplasticity that forms from that, it's either going to empower us
Yes.
and be like gasoline on the fire for us
Absolutely.
to excel, or it's going to keep us in this box.
So you're writing that.
You're writing that.
I am. It's
Yes.
already written, girl.
Yes.
It's already
Just
written.
yes.
Look, shameless plug. I've already told her.
Exactly. Yes, you did.
I've
Yes,
got-
exactly.
We'll get that book done.
That's right.
One thing that came to me too. So again, conversation with my dad. I've written 4 books, and then there's a workbook that goes with this, and there's a Spanish version, by the way. And I was telling my dad, I was like, I got so many things I want to try to address. I'm like, but I just can't write books all the time. Like, at some point, and he says, well, what about like helping other people write books?
Hey, Dad.
And I was like, you got a good point there. And so from that moment, and I've always loved the metaphor of dropping a pebble in a body of water and how it ripples.
Yes.
And so I talk
And
to
your
my
purpose
students
is
about
always
that.
bigger than you.
Yes, it's always bigger. So helping other people find their passion, find their purpose,
Right.
that's always been my mission anyway. So I've helped now over 30 authors publish
Nice.
books as well. So anyone out there that's trying to write a book or afraid to write a book or already have a book written and just afraid to publish or don't know who to talk to, that's what we've been doing now. I've got an amazing lady out of North Carolina who, believe it or not, I've actually never met in person.
Okay.
She was referred to me by a mutual friend, and when we were in Illinois, she moved, she moved, I moved, and she moved, and we've actually never met other than via Zoom. And when I tell you that is my sister from another mister, like she and I pray together, we've done projects together, and it's an amazing partnership, and God just literally brings projects our way that have been life-changing.
So what are your social media profiles? Where they
Okay. I guess the best way to find me, because my name is spelled uniquely. It's
Yes, it is.
Sedrick Newbern. So I'm at Sedrick Newbern on Instagram, Facebook, and the X social media platform as well. And then I also have a website that you can find if you go to sedricknewbern.com. That's probably the best way.
Perfect. You have got to check out the book, and I'm not just saying that just because you are, one of my guests and a friend, but this is really, both books are just absolutely excellent. So definitely go out there, purchase these books. You will not regret it. If you have not subscribed to Black Coffee Conversations, please go out there, like, subscribe, share,
Tell a friend.
tell a friend. Exactly. It's all about
Comments.
We
We
love
to respond to
We
people
do.
who have great comments.
That's
Please
right.
give us some feedback.
Right. And guess what? We'll see you next Tuesday. You all take care.
Peace.
Thank you.